Photo Raw, as you've just downloaded it over the last day or so, is really the beginning of the journey, not the end. That is the first version. Think of it as a 1.0. For us to go through and now add on to that, add those other essential features that people are looking for, we really need your help to do that, to figure out what's most important to you and how those should be shaped. The best way that you can provide us that information is through the Photo Raw project. So when you go to the ON1 website and click on Photo Raw, there'll be a link right there for the Photo Raw project. The Photo Raw project works like this. You submit your feature request, the way you want something to work, or you find it in there. There's already over 300 suggestions from our users. You talk about it and tell us what you want it to look like, how it should work. Other people comment on it, and then you vote. You give it a rating of how important that is. Based on the amount of feedback and the amount of the star ratings, that helps us determine what's next on our product roadmap. It's not just a bunch of engineers sitting in a room thinking what cool things we can do with technology. I'm a photographer first, so my goal is to figure out what can I do, what can I solve, what are the problems that photographers have.
And I think each one of us has a specific feature that we're really excited about. I know that I think I've upvoted the pen tool like 8 times. I'm like, no, that really needs to be in there. So like each one of us has a tool that we're really excited about, and that's the best part about the Photo Raw project is it's interactive. So we can see what other people are interested. Like there are things that I didn't even know I wanted, and then someone posted it on the Raw project, and I'm like, oh my God, that'd be so cool. So it's really, really great.
Yeah, so go to the project, find the thing, chances are it's already there, tell us how you want it to work, and vote it up. Now, let's talk about some of the things that we know are coming. The first one is there's several smaller features that didn't make it into Photo Raw that were in previous versions of that. You have to remember that under the hood, we rebuilt this thing from the ground up. New RAW engine, new processing pipeline, new previewer, new preset structure. Basically everything except for the user interface, the buttons you click on, has been rewritten from scratch. So there's certain things that we have to go back and redo in that GPU non-destructive way. So those tools and things I'm listing right here will be coming as part of free updates in the first 3 months of 2017. So the quick mask brush and the blur and chisel mask tools will come back to effects. You'll get the clone stamp and red eye tool inside of develop and effects. There'll be a new dedicated portrait filter inside of effects that replaces the portrait module. You've seen the skin retouching and the local adjustment tools. That works really well, but we also want to give you the ability to select faces, outline eyes and mouth, and have guided adjustments for those areas as well. Plus, you'll also see development effects return back to the Photoshop panel inside of Photoshop, so you'll be able to apply presets right inside of Photoshop. There's also the new Lightroom Migration Assistant coming. So in the early spring, probably in the March or April timeframe, we'll have a new tool that'll help you get your information out of Lightroom into Photo Raw. It will take all of your collections and all of your presets and migrate those over. It'll also take all of your photos, their metadata, and their developed settings, and we'll bring those over as well. There's a best practices guide coming here before the end of the year that'll talk about how you can use Lightroom today with Photo Raw. And I think, Hudson made a great suggestion, and that is you just take one job, something you're currently working on, and you can play with it in both Lightroom and in Photo Raw. You can compare and contrast them, and because both are non-destructive editors, you're not losing anything in that process. Each can have their own settings without harming each other. So it's a great way to get started.
It's interesting. When you originally told me that we were going to be until March when we get the Lightroom Migration Assistant, I thought, oh, that's a bummer. But then, the reality is it takes a while to adjust your workflow. And I think it's to everyone's benefit to take a little time to use this software, work on it job by job or scene by scene or vacation by vacation. Leave your old editing workflow, untouched. You can go back and work on old images the way that you always have and kind of develop that new workflow. We're going to talk a lot about this in Plus in January, but develop that new workflow, and then that Lightroom Migration Assistant is going to come on along at exactly the right time.
Yeah. All right, there's a couple other really big features that are coming that to me are super important, and we're going to see these again in the first 3 months of the year. One is a compare mode. So giving you the ability to look at multiple photos at the same time and be able to zoom and pan them at the same time. So imagine if, for those of you who are Lightroom users, there's a survey mode and a compare mode. Imagine merging those two together and into a single mode. So here's how it works. In Browse, I'll just bring up the film strip, and as I select photos, they'll appear up here in the top as thumbnails. I can close these drawers on the left and right to get them out of the way, so I have a larger area to work on. And as I remove things from my selection, there's a remove from selection keyboard shortcut, or if you're using a filter like Liz was showing and Hudson was showing, when I use something like the dislike X key, it'll just go away. It'll filter out of that. So I can grab 5 or 6 photos of, let's say, a family. This is one that always happens. And I can throw out the ones that I don't like. And then I can actually click and I can zoom in and I can pan in the exact same position on all those photos, up to 100%. So I can actually look at, which eyes on Johnny look the best. And I can zoom in, pan around, throw out the ones where there's a blink, or throw out the ones where it's out of focus. Today I have to go into Photoshop to actually look at multiple photos at 100%. I can't do that in any other tool right now. So I think that compare mode is going to be super handy.
And as you eliminate images from the compare view, if you're filtering them out, the images that remain get larger and make it easier and easier for you to determine which one's better. That's so great.
Because a lot of times you get down at some point, there's 2 and they're really close to each other, and that's really when you can zoom in and start to pan around and really pick out the best of those 2. The other one that I think goes hand in hand with this is the ability to create a group. I do a lot of HDR shooting, and I hate when I look at my collection because I got all these brackets in there and all these pictures of my hand to tell me where the bracket begins and ends. And if you do sports action, you get the same thing, or a bouquet toss, panoramics. There's lots of cases where you get a group of related photos. And wouldn't it be nice if you just kind of squish those down so it looked like one photo? Well, that's what you can do. You just select a group. So in this case, this was an HDR bracket. I just select those and I right-click and select group. And when I do that, they'll collapse down into a single group. A group is kind of like a folder. It works just like a folder does. It'll have a little badge that tells me it's a group. I can even name it independently from the file names if I wanted to. So I can search for it. I can manage that either as a folder, like one item, so I could delete the whole thing if I wanted to, or rename everything inside of it automatically. Even pick which photo I want to have at the top, the one that I view in this folder view. I double click to go inside of it and it shows me the photos inside of it. You notice the breadcrumbs at the top, it tells me the name of the group that I'm in. I can now work on each photo in the group independently as well. So it's straightforward because it works just like a folder, but it rolls up in the way that I can put everything into those groups.
I love that it builds into the breadcrumb trail. That's great.
Yeah, really handy. The other thing you notice over here is the photo settings. We talked about this a little bit. We want to be able to give you an idea of what you've done on a photo. There'll also be badges on the thumbnails as well for the photos that you've edited. But we wanted to take a different approach from history. The problem with history is it's a very long linear list. It shows like every brushstroke. And if you go back in history and you want to make an adjustment, as soon as you make an adjustment, everything above that's gone, right?
Yeah.
That's horrible. I just want to change one thing in the middle. So the photo settings pane gives you effectively a non-linear history where I can go back and change things in the middle of it. So for this given photo, it shows me I've used crop and retouching. It shows what filters I've used in Develop, what filters I've used in Effect, and what local adjustments are. I can go in and I can just double click on one of those to adjust it, or I can right click and turn it off or delete it as well. So it makes it really easy to see your settings and copy and paste them as well.
That's great. So if you want to go back and change that filter that you threw in, or that adjustment, you don't necessarily have to undo every dust spot that you just went and did after the filter that you didn't like. That's really powerful.
Yeah, or you've done some portrait retouching. By the time you get back and you look like, I kind of overdid that. Right. It'd be really nice just to be able to surgically go straight back to that skin retouching filter and change my amount without having to step back and lose everything I did after.
That's great.
Yeah.
So makes it a lot easier. And that kind of works hand in hand with some other cool new features that are coming in the first half of 2017 as well, like versions. So you can create multiple versions, think virtual copy of a photo, which allows you to have different settings on it without actually taking up any more room on your hard drive. I could have one version of color and one version in black and white, for example.
Also kind of fills the role of snapshots. We had a question.
Yeah, exactly. It'd be very similar to snapshots as well. Also, lens correction. This is a huge one. So coming out very soon, probably in the February timeframe, we'll have automated lens corrections. That's really critical for mirrorless cameras or cameras that don't have interchangeable lenses. The higher end point and shoots, they really rely on lens correction to make those things look good. So they'll have automatic lens correction that will read the metadata from the lens and correct for it automatically. Today, there's a manual transform pane that you can use as well to correct things like perspective. Those are a little tougher to do based on metadata, but you can do horizontal and vertical perspective, correct for barrel distortion and pin cushion. You can rotate it, scale it, things like that. Some other cool things are coming, workspaces. I kind of mentioned how I do it with presets today, but we'll have formal workspaces in the future. We'll give you some great ones out of the box, plus you'll be able to create your own.
Cool.
There'll be improved compression of PSD files, so they won't take up so much space, and camera profiles. This is really important for especially people who shoot with like a Fuji camera, and you set that camera to Pro Via 100. Well, we want to make sure it looks like Pro V100 when it comes into the software as well. So everything you've seen here is based on the feedback that we've got out of the ON1 RAW project and out of the Plus forums, out of the community from our Plus users. So to decide what's going to happen in the second half of the year, it's really up to you guys to go to those places and tell us what's important to you. And when we decide what we're going to work on, we'll tell you in advance. So it's completely transparent what we're working on and when it's going to come out.
And pen tool and soft proofing, you guys remember? Click, 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 click.
Or if tethered shooting is important to you, go in and add tethered shooting.
I'd like that too.
Every time, soft proofing. Are we going to get soft proofing? Does everybody want soft proofing? All right, so we want to make sure that we get as many questions answered as possible. So we're going to do this last little Q&A. You guys have been sending us some great questions. So we've got a couple more that we're going to answer for you before we head out for the end of the day. So the first question is, can you delete unused presets and preset categories?
Yes, so presets are completely user managed. So you can go in, you can rename presets, delete presets. Can't move them yet, but that's actually something that will be coming, the ability to move them from category to category. Yeah. And of course you can mark them as a favorite too, which is probably a better thing to do. You just click on the little heart in the corner, it becomes a favorite, and that appears at the top of your favorites category. So if there's a few you use often, like, I don't know, dynamic contrast and big softy, they'll just appear in the top of your favorites for you.
I use that all the time.
Yeah.
All right, so one of the other questions that we had is, can I use RAW with micro photography and infrared photography?
I don't see why not.
No.
Was that, so I assume we went macro photography, like close-up photography, or,
well, it says
or like
micro.
microscopes? So it might be like microscopes. I honestly don't have a whole lot of experience in that. I don't see why you wouldn't be able to do that.
I mean, usually you're using a camera through the optics.
Yes.
Yeah.
So most of the time, microscope photography actually produces a TIFF or a JPEG format. So the last time that I did this was with a large microscope in Washington, and I have a friend who was doing DNA reading, and she was basically looking at DNA strands, and so I was able to take pictures through the microscope, and it actually produced JPEGs. So if that's what you're doing, heck yeah. And yes, we can produce that, which is really cool. And then if that was supposed to be macro photography, if it's a raw JPEG, TIFF, PSD file, whatever you're working on, it's going to work inside of RAW, which is really, really cool.
Yeah, the lens isn't going to change anything.
No.
Yeah.
In terms of infrared, there's certain things that infrared photographers like to have. They need to have a really big range on the temperature and tint slider. That will actually be changing from the current version to a Kelvin-based one that'll be even broader, coming out very soon. Plus, you tend to like to be able to use a channel mixer when you do your black and white conversion. And when you do the black and white conversion, there's a channel mixer option. You can basically choose which percentage of each color channel you want to use for that. There's even a blue filter preset for infrared photographers.
Cool.
All right, one of the other questions that we had is, where is the RAW database located for backup?
So it's stored inside of your user folder. So don't think of it like a catalog, like something, a document you need to manually move around. It's part of the preferences, if you will, for the application. Now, it will also write those sidecar files out, and those will live with each individual photo. So the best way to back up that information is to do a whole computer backup, like Time Machine or something like that, that backs up your computer all the time. It also backs itself up into those same locations to prevent against corruption and self-heals itself. But then also those sidecar files are backed up every time you back up your photos. So no matter where your photos live, as long as you're backing them up using any off-the-shelf backup system, your settings are basically double backed up. And that actually brings us to another question about sidecar files and using them across multiple computers. So this is something I do a lot. I have a laptop that I use for home, and I got a big iMac that I use at work. I use Dropbox to synchronize my work between them. So all of my work lives on both computers and in Dropbox. If I make a change on my desktop computer at work, when I get home, it's automatically updated on my laptop at home. I see those same settings. Now I use Dropbox for that, but you can use anything that stores your photos in a common accessible location.
Right.
So it could be a cloud syncing service like Dropbox or Google Drive, or there's a gazillion of them out there. It could be an external hard drive that you take from computer A to computer B. It could be your internal network, or it could be a network area storage device. We have a little Synology network area storage device that we use for our testing in-house. And I think there's 30,000 photos on there, and everybody in the office can all see them, and all the settings sync across all of them. So,
yeah, I have more than a terabyte in my catalog, so I don't tend to to use Dropbox for everything, but I do use an external hard drive when I'm on the road with my laptop, and I store all my photos into there, and then I just bring it back to my big desktop and integrate it into the master library when I get home. So.
All right, one of the other questions that we had is, if you edit and add keywords to an image, or if you edit any of the other metadata, is that going to be read through other programs like Lightroom?
yep. Yep. So we will automatically write an Adobe compatible XMP sidecar file as well, which will store all of the metadata changes you make on it so that if it goes to Lightroom or other apps that support XMP, those will be read, and it actually works both directions. So if you've done work in Lightroom and you export out your sidecar files, your XMP sidecar files, we'll see those changes as well.
And those changes are stars, color coding.
Yep, stars, colors, keywords, description, anything you put in the IPTC fields or EXIF fields are stored there.
But not the develop changes.
Not the develop changes, yes.
Okay, one of the questions that I'm really excited about answering, because I already have my answer ready. What are your favorite keyboard shortcuts inside of On1 Photo Raw? Because there have been keyboard shortcuts that Dan has been like, oh yeah, did you know that you can do that? And I'm like, no. It's because sometimes you get into a way of doing things and you're like, oh right, there's an easier way to do that. That's great. And so I think that all of us have a keyboard shortcut that we use. Do you mind if I show off mine? It's my favorite.
Sure. Go for it.
Okay, so I am obviously a big portrait retoucher, and it's something that I use all the time. So when I'm working on images, a lot of times I do something called dodging and burning, which means that I'm selectively lightening and darkening certain areas of my image, and I use the brush tool to be able to do that. The masking brush is great. So inside the local adjustments pane, I have my brush selected, and up in the tool options bar, you can adjust the size, the feathering, and the opacity of your brush. And the keyboard shortcuts for that are the bracket key on your keyboard to adjust the size. You can use the shift and then the bracket key to adjust the feathering. And then you can use the option or alt key, and that adjusts the opacity. So every time that the last time that I showed someone how to do this, when I think it was a webinar like months and months ago, and these functions have been in On1 for a long time, they were like, you can do that? I'm like, I know. That's how I felt when I figured it out. Because when you're doing a large amount of brushing, one of the big changes that I make all the time is opacity. Yeah. Because when you're dodging and burning, there are going to be areas that need more or less lightening. And instead of having to paint and drag, I adjust the opacity depending on the part of the image that I'm adjusting. So those are my favorite keyboard shortcuts.
Well, I didn't know about the opacity shortcut. That is awesome.
It's the coolest.
I like the J key to be able to see whether I'm clipping highlights or blocking out shadows as I'm doing my white and black point adjustments.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a couple, so hand in hand with that is the X key for switching your paint mode from paint in to paint out. You can also hold the option key to do that temporarily.
Yeah.
But in general, we try really hard to match what I think of as industry standard shortcuts. So if that certain keyboard shortcut works in Photoshop or works in Lightroom, it's probably going to work the same way inside of Photo Raw. So you can zoom in and zoom out and pan and changing tools all use the same shortcuts that you're already used to using. And in the user guide, there'll be a great quick reference for all those keyboard shortcuts.
All right, we got a question on, can you do file renaming and similar functions? Do you want to showcase that, Liz?
Yeah, so Dan actually showed it a little bit earlier, but I'll go ahead and jump back in because I know that it is hugely important. And obviously it's hugely important to me because I am very, very OCD about how I rename my files. Like really, really specific. If someone else tried to edit my images, they'd probably be like, how do you know where everything is? I'm like, don't touch my files. So if you want to rename an image or rename a group of images, all you need to do is control click or right click on that file. And in this drop down menu, kind of right near the middle is something called rename file. And you can choose an individual name. So right now I'm just renaming one photo. So it's Canaan Bridal with a number at the end. And maybe I want to say that this is like not a photo I'll use, or this is the best photo that I've got in the bunch. I can do that. You can also select a large amount of files and just control click or right click. And from here, you can choose rename files, and it gives you the ability to select how you'd like to rename all of them. And if I open this up, you'll see I can choose the current name and then maybe add a slug at the end. So like maybe these are gonna be, these are the best of this group, or these are the best images of this entire folder, something like that. You can also choose your own text and add or subtract as many categories as you want. So I can choose text, serial number, I can add as many as I want. So a lot of times I've got a couple, the type of photo that it is, the specific date and sequence, and I go through and I add each one of those in a very particular manner. And so you can do that through this batch rename dialog, which is really, really great. So it's something that's extremely useful, and it's gonna help you find your images a little bit easier, which is great.
Yeah. And all the typical drag and drop to move files around. So you can drag from folder to folder, you can delete, you can move, you can rename. All the things you're used to doing at the file system level, you can do inside a browser as well.
Yeah.
It's very flexible. So I got a question for Dan here. Is Auto Advance available for sorting in Browse?
Auto Advance will be available. It's actually disabled right now. In our first maintenance release, that'll come back, and you'll be able to use Auto Advance again.
All right. Well, I think that's pretty much, those are all the questions.
I got one more good
Dan's
one.
got another one.
One more good one. This one comes straight from Craig Cudell, our company president, who reminded me that we were talking about how to get your pictures off your iPhone. And I was saying to use a cable. That's a pretty old-fashioned way to do it. Another way to do it is to use your cloud syncing service that you use. Just because Apple makes it hard with iCloud or whatever the heck they call it, you can use something like Dropbox or Google Drive instead. So if you just turn on the automatic camera upload from Dropbox app, it just kind of sits in the background, and every picture you take, it uploads to your Dropbox, and then magically it'll just appear on your desktop. No cable, no process.
That's awesome.
And actually, Dropbox has in their app for either iPhone or Android, there's just a checkbox in the settings to upload all the photos that are taken with that device automatically to the cloud, and that's something that I always do because losing your phone when you've got that really, really great image that matters so much to you, and all of a sudden you leave your phone in the cab.
It's memories. I mean, I think that even though all of us, I would consider all three of us professional photographers who use, pretty great cameras, and we love what we do, and we love these raw files. The phone is an easy thing to pull out. I've forgotten my camera on occasion, which I feel like is embarrassing to admit as a photographer. Like, oh, did you guys want me to take pictures? I'm sorry, I left it at home.
Not at a wedding.
No, that would be horrible. Hey guys, what's up? I totally forgot my camera, but I got my phone. No, but like sometimes when you're out with your friends or you take pictures that end up being memories and they're things that you want to save, and I automatically upload all of my photos from my phone to Dropbox because a lot of times I take a lot of pictures. There's like 4,000 phone pictures on my phone. So that's an insane amount, and I need to just delete a whole bunch. And by deleting them on my phone, they stay in my Dropbox. And so it's an automatic backup. Whoa. And then you just access it in Browse. And you can say, all right, I'm going to edit these photos. And a lot of times I actually print my photos out and I send them to my family. I live really far away from my grandmother, and I send her a packet of photos every couple of months. And they're usually phone photos. Honestly, those are the ones that relate back to what I do in my everyday life. But it's really great to do that.
Dan and I are parents, and so you've got a kid in your arms.
10,000 kid pics.
Probably not carrying your big 5D Mark IV or your Nikon D810. You're just whip the phone out, and a lot of your most precious family memories are stored in that little amazing device. So Dropbox is the way to go, and it's as easy as pointing on one browse at your Dropbox folder, and there they are.
Yep. Yeah. Also, if you don't have kids, it's totally fine because I take pictures of my friends' dogs. And I take pictures of my dad's horse. That's kind of my best friend.
You take awesome pictures of animals, actually.
I love taking pictures of animals. So if you don't have kids, you can still make memories by using other things.
And before we go, following Liz on Instagram is a really fun way to see some great Portland culture, amazing pictures of portraits and people and animals. Lots and lots of cute, fuzzy animals. So,
which with that, we answered all of our questions, you guys, and this is kind of the end of our day. Which I'm kind of sad.
I know.
I really enjoy. We did another one of these a couple weeks ago, and if you're interested in watching that, it was recorded, and this one was recorded too. So I want to make sure that that's mentioned. It will be up. You will be able to watch this again. I know that just like with the last one, I had a lot of friends who wanted to watch it because they were like, "What do you do with your life?" And I'm like, "This is what I do." So they were able to go back and rewatch it. And so you can rewatch the one from a couple weeks ago, and then you can rewatch this one too. So that's really, really important, just in case you guys missed any of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So with that, we're pretty much at the end. I think the biggest thing is make sure that you guys go over to our website. We have the number of resources that we have at on1.com is massive. I know that my favorite part is the ability to access the Photo Raw project and be able to look at that. I know Hudson is really excited about the Plus community. This is something that's massive and has so many people involved, and that's answering tons of questions about the software.
And it's fun.
Yeah, and you get to talk to other people. And then we also have all of our tutorials and our training guides. Dan is kind of our head develop dude, and he's the one that we learn how to do things. We're like, hey, Dan, how do you do this? And he's like, I will tell you.
We've got the guru.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of development, I'd like to have a big shout out to our development team, all of the engineers and all of the QA guys and gals who've been burning the candle at both ends for 6 months now.
Yeah.
Very proud of you guys.
And we're really, really appreciative of all of the users too. You guys are part of the reason why we get to do this, and you're part of the reason why we're producing things like the ON1 Photo Raw project and have things like the ON1 Plus community. We wouldn't be able to do that without all of you guys. We're really thankful for that.
Huge thanks. And I want to thank everybody who made this live event possible too. We've got Seth, and we've got Steve, Woody, Rick hanging out back there, and we've got the master of ceremonies, the wizard Andy Adkins, directing the whole thing. And without them, this wouldn't be happening. We wouldn't look, nearly as good as we might.
Well, I would still look this good. You guys maybe not.
It's all lighting for us.
It's basically lighting for Dan and I. We are parents after all. So.
All right, so really quickly, I want to make sure that you guys can follow us and find more information about what we do. Dan, why don't you take it away?
You can find my occasional series of blog posts at the ON1 blog, and I'm not a particularly social person, so I have no social media. But you can always email me, dan@on1.com.
Oh, Dan's perfectly social. So everything's available for finding me at hudsonhenry.com, just www.hudsonhenry.com. I'm active on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, and there's links there to either email me or follow me on social. I go a lot of crazy places. I like to take pictures that are ultra high resolution in places that are difficult to get to. So if you want to see some of that, come check it out. There's also lots of training materials, videos, and stuff about the Plus community, and you can always contact me about anything. I'm happy to answer questions. Liz?
And I'm Liz LePage, and the best way to follow me is through my website, elizabethlepage.com, and from there you'll find links specifically to my Instagram page. If you are interested in following pictures of Portland culture and a lot of dogs. You're going to see a lot of pictures of dogs and a lot of pictures of horses. So if you're interested in that...
you're underselling it. It's a lot of fun. It's a lot
so
of
if you're
fun.
interested in following a little bit about what I do, my 2017 is going to be a lot about education. So definitely jump over to my blog and follow me over there. And with that, I think we're at the end of our day.
We forgot one important person to thank.
Who?
Patrick, because none of us would be happy without Patrick.
We love Patrick.
We do.
Patrick is the best.
Yep.
He's behind the scenes,
behind
and
the
no one
scenes.
ever gets to see him, but he's awesome. We love Patrick. Hi, Patrick.
All right.
All right.
So
Well,
thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. It's been a lot of fun.
yeah, and don't forget to jump over to the website and take a look at this recording so that you guys can re-up some of this knowledge. I know you guys are really excited about ON1 Raw. And with that, happy holidays from ON1.
Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.